Thank you for being here. Our work in the Innovine project was to evaluate the agronomical and enological features of 6 new downy mildew-resistant varieties that were cultivated in 3 different ecological sites. These varieties were obtained through a conventional breeding program using susceptible varieties Tocai Friulano, Sauvignon, Merlot and Cabernet Sauvignon as susceptible varieties, and 20.3 and Bianca as resistant varieties, as parents. The variety used for the trials were Flertai, Sorelli, Sauvignon Maris, Sauvignon Cretos, and 2 varieties provisionally named 31120 and 31103. These varieties were compared with Tocai Friulano, Sauvignon and Merlot into experimental vineyard and with Montepulciano in another experimental vineyard. Vegetative, productive, and enological traits were evaluated, microvinification produced, and testing session organized. Sanitary control were performed both on resistant and conventional varieties. The location of the 3 experimental vineyards are shown in the picture. 2 are in the northeastern part of Italy and 1 in the central part. The characteristic of the 3 experimental vineyards, Site 1, North Coastal, is an alluvial plain reclaimed with an average rainfall rate of 1,000 millimeters every year, with a 71% of relative humidity. The Site 2, Rauchedo, is in the North Mainland, is an alluvial plain with an average rainfalls of 1,500 millimeters and 80% of relative humidity during the vegetative period. The Site 3 in the central part of Italy has a rainfall rate of 670 millimeters and a 70% relative humidity. These were the output of the metastation. The green color indicates the leaf wetting period expressed in hour. The blue color, the rainfalls expressed in millimeters, and the orange color, the average daily temperature of the 3 sites inspected. What's relevant in 2016 weather trend? We have less rainfalls than 2014 and 15, but we have heavy rains during bloom in northern site and during ripening in central Italy. And the high disease aggressiveness and frequencies was observed in all inspected sites and was due mainly to the long-lasting leaf wetting period combined with very favorable disease temperature. The potential of mildews infection was estimated through ORT DSS decision support system that provides information about number and timing of infections, and through visual inspections of non-treated controls. This was the output for what concerned downy mildews about primary infection and secondary infection in the North Coastal site. Concentrating only on the red diamond, you can see that we have around 70 secondary infections during the season. The situation in Site 2, Rauchedo, was even worse and a little bit better in the central site. This was the output of DSS for powdery mildew. This disease is a little bit different from downy mildew, so we can estimate a disease pressure that was medium to high between May and July. The situation in North Coastal site, North Mainland site, and Central site. This is a summary of ORTA's DSS output. The first infection was seen in all inspected sites at the end of May, both on non-treated control and on conventional varieties that underwent conventional treatment protocol. The disease resistance was also assessed through visual inspections. 3 seasonal inspections were performed, and disease scoring was taken in accordance with the descriptors. The different colors correspond to different scale of seriousness, with green color referring to healthy plants. This is a summary of our observation. On your left, you have the symptoms observed on bunches, and on your right, on leaves. No symptoms were observed on resistant varieties in site number 3 in the central part of Italy, while a mild infection was observed on bunches of sorelli. About 6 to 11% of bunches display symptoms of attack, but with less than 5% of seriousness, while the non-treated control, that is, it's immediately, you can see immediately on the left because in red color, was severely damaged. The situation for powdery mildew was pretty the same, except for Sauvignon Cretos in a highly conductive situation of site number 2 and site number 1, where we registered around 40% of bunches with 5 to 50% of seriousness. Now, the graphics report a number of treatments administered on resistant and conventional varieties. About 12 to 16 treatments on average were administered on conventional varieties, with peaks of 22 treatments in 2014. That was one of the worst seasons we have ever experimented. And only 2 to 3 treatments were administered on resistant varieties. All the information concerning pest management, vineyard management, climate information, and soil data were recorded in an Excel file that was provided by Horta for the environmental, economic, and human health impact assessment of the common conventional varieties and innovative practices, resistant varieties. All this information were synthesized in 6 main topics concerning impact on health, air, soil, biodiversity, energy demand, and water consumption. This was the output. On your left, the situation with conventional varieties, Merlot or Montepulciano. We have chosen one of the conventional varieties, and resistant varieties on the right in the 3 inspected sites. It is immediately evident that impact on biodiversity, soil, water, and above all on human health is substantially lower for resistant varieties. What about plant productivity? 2014 was characterized by unfavorable weather conditions that severely compromised the productivity both of resistant and conventional varieties. But the situation was a little bit better in 2015, so it increased and it stabilized in 2016. The yield of resistant varieties was comparable to conventional varieties. And testing session, that was the most pleasant part for us and for the project. The panel test was composed of enologists, cellar technicians, and agronomists. Wines were blind tested in groups of samples, and every group including a wine from resistant variety and its parental. And the wine from the parental varieties was included in more groups in order to normalize within group and between groups evaluation scores. This was the output. I don't want to influence the jury for the next testing session, but the Flertai has a good dampness, fruity and floral aromas, and these characteristics were revealed in both samples coming from the 2 northern sites. Sorelli is a good aromatic amplitude, structure, and minerality, and it has also hints of pear and almond aromas that resemble those of its parental, Tokai Friulano. They were grouped together and standardized on the same parentals that it's outlined in red colors in all the graphics you are going to see. On your left, Sauvignon Cretos. This is medium intensity with peaks towards spicy, tobacco, and vegetal. You can see that probably the comparison with a high-quality clone of Sauvignon penalized the score of aromas like fruity and floral, but when the same Sauvignon was compared with Sauvignon Maris, the situation was inverted. For what concern 31-120 and 31-103, they were deeply influenced by the site of origin of the grapes, with a more fresh aromas when cultivated in the northern site, and with a sweet and mellow hint when cultivated in the central site. The bouquet of 31103 resembled that of the parental Merlot. What we can say about resistant varieties, that resistant varieties display good to excellent foliar and bunch resistant to downy mildew in the field condition of the 3 experimental sites. Powdery mildew resistant was adequate for the investigated site, and damages on bunches of Sauvignon Crétos were observed when the varieties were cultivated under highly conductive conditions. Resistant varieties required less treatment than conventional varieties. Environmental and human toxicity score, economic and environmental impact are substantially lower for resistant varieties, and yield of resistant varieties is comparable to conventional varieties and stable over the years, except for Sauvignon Maris that has female flowers and benefit from good weather trend during bloom. So what we can say about the wine of resistant varieties, as I said, I don't want to anticipate anything because you will have the chance to taste them during the testing session. So you're welcome to our testing table. Thank you very much.